Next up on our tour of the 2023 Green Bay Packers is our linebacker position. This is including players that are considered true linebackers and edge rushers. These players should have a great season as there's a lot of talent, pedigree, and veteran leadership that every group needs. So let's go on ahead and start with Devondre Campbell, the man up the middle. Coming off of an all-pro season in 2021, the 8th-year pro out of Minnesota didn't quite reach those heights in 2022, but still had a quality season as the leader in the middle. Campbell had 96 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and an interception return for a touchdown. He did all that even when he missed 4 games in the season. He is still a very capable linebacker, solid in both run and pretty excellent in pass coverage, and I expect him to have a better season this year, especially as he should be healthy for an entire season, but we shall see as he has been struggling with an injury during training camp. The first of the Packers' first-round picks in the 2022 draft caused quite a stir, as there are many who were shocked that he was taken in the first round at all, and by the Packers of all teams. Coming out of Georgia, Walker has a ton of potential as a linebacker, being really fast and having a great physical skill set, but is expected to struggle to adapt to the NFL level. He showed some flashes of potential his rookie season as he had 121 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 7 pass deflections. He did have some trouble this past season though, getting ejected from 2 games for making contact with either refs or opposing coaches. But he has worked on that this offseason, and I'm looking forward to see what kind of year 2 leap he makes this upcoming season. The 3rd-year pro out of Boston College had a solid season as a special teamer and spot starter when players like Devondre Campbell were out due to injury. In 17 games, which include 1 start, McDuffie had 43 total tackles and a fumble recovery. He has improved every single season with the Packers, being great in preseason and the training camp, and he could be pushing for some starting time depending on how others are perform around him or due to injuries as well. Pretty confident in him as the 3rd linebacker. The longest tenured Packer in this linebacking core, Preston is a very solid, dependable starter that would not be the most dominant pass rusher out there, but for a number 2 option, he is pretty darn good. Last season, he had 59 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 20 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. He is a really good second pairing with Sean Gary, and should be in for a bigger season this year as Gary should be fully healthy by week 1 and take some pressure off of Preston for being the number 1 option on the pass rush. The 5th-round rookie out of South Carolina was pressed into a starting role earlier than expected, as with Rashawn Gary's injury made him play more in the season. And he did a solid job as well. In 17 games with 7 of them as starts, Enagbare had 31 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, and 3 pass deflections. Now he's going to settle into a more proper role for him, which is as the 3rd rotational edge rusher, who will give you a lot of energy off the bench. He has been absolutely fantastic in the preseason, having 2 sacks against the Patriots and a forced fumble, and I'm looking forward to see what he can do this upcoming season without having that pressure of being a starter there. The 5th-year pro out of Michigan was having a fantastic start to his 2022 season until he tore his ACL in Week 9 against the Lions. This injury showed just how important Gary is to the Packers defense, as the pass rush really took a nosedive after he went down to injury. In his 9 games last season, Gary had 32 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. He was just recently activated off the PUP list and is starting to participate in practice again, including training camp. Hopefully he should be ready to get to go starting the season and continue with another great season coming off the edge and terrorizing opposing offensive lines. Signed as an undrafted free agent out of the University of Florida, Cox is an interesting player to keep an eye on. He has all the physical traits in the world, being an incredible athlete at his time in Georgia and Florida. But there are some concerns with him as he was kicked out of both Georgia and Florida due to character issues. Hopefully those are behind him and he can focus on developing his insane physical traits, as he could have been a 3rd-round pick if not for the issues he had. In college, he had 138 total tackles, 14.5 sacks, 34.5 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble. He has been playing very well in camp and should be interesting to see if he makes the roster this season. I really hope he does, as he is an insane talent and we need to develop him as well. Drafted in the 5th round of the 2019 draft out of Oregon by the Denver Broncos, Hollins has turned into a journeyman backup edge rusher. He spent a couple years with the Rams as a rotational rusher before joining the Packers midway through last season. In his time with the Packers last year, he had 9 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, and 2.5 sacks. It will be interesting to see if he makes the roster, as there is a lot of competition for rotational spots among the edge rushers. A 6-year man out of Cincinnati, Wilson has carved out a nice role as a backup linebacker who can occasionally start for you if need be. He has spent some time with the Vikings, Eagles, Texans, and Packers in his time in the league, and for Green Bay last season, Wilson had 17 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 sack. Things could be dicey with him making the roster, as again, we have a ton of talent at the linebacker position, and it will be difficult to see him making the roster in that case. Signed as an undrafted free agent out of San Diego State, Banks is a player who is in between positions right now. He is listed as a linebacker on the Packers depth chart, but was mainly a defensive lineman in college. In his 4 years at San Diego State University, Banks had 137 total tackles, 13 sacks, 42 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble as well. I don't think he will make the 53-man roster, but could potentially be on the practice squad this upcoming season. An undrafted free agent out of SMU, Phillips is more of an inside linebacker at his time in college. Across 4 seasons, Phillips had 179 total tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 7 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. It will be interesting to see how he does in camp and for how long he can last on the preseason roster as well, and if he can also potentially make it onto the practice squad. The Packers' first round pick in 2023, the Iowa product looks to be a beast for the Packers in a few seasons. He looks to be an absolute stud, being very physically talented and showed a lot of potential in his time at Iowa. At school, he had 71 total tackles, 13.5 sacks, and 11 tackles for loss. He won't be getting a lot of playing time right away, as he is behind Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary at the moment, but he should go on a similar pathway to Gary, as in he sits as a rotational rusher for a couple years, spends some time to develop, and then bursts onto the scene with a massive campaign that shows that he is capable of being one of the best rushers in the league. I cannot wait to see what this kid can do. Like, really, he's going to be great. Mosby had a very interesting college career at Fresno State, where he played 3 different positions during his time at college. His first 2 seasons were as a defensive back, then he became a linebacker, and his last season was a defensive end. Overall for his career at Fresno State, Mosby had 156 total tackles, 6 sacks, 26.5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 9 forced fumbles. His unique skill sets could be interesting to keep an eye on, as flexibility is something that the Packers do value. Well, that's all I have for this video today, as we went through the linebackers who are in camp right now. It'll be interesting to see if I'm able to get the rest of the roster, the DBs and special teamers, out before the final roster cuts are out next week. I have not been able to keep up with video making this past couple days, but I'm trying to get back into it again. And coming up next will be another Packers review after the final preseason game, going over roster cuts next week, and also another week in reviews coming up. But if you like the content, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more, and I'll be seeing you guys very, very soon.